So I've been thinking about making a video on this for a while, but I just never got around to it. And then James, Spacetime Badass, recently did a live stream where the topic of personality types came up, and that reminded me that I wanted to make this video. Then Giz pretty much went ahead and did that, and now I feel like I'm ripping off of Giz, but I'll hopefully be able to make this video different. So I'm talking about the Mbti, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which is a test to determine your psychological type based on how you perceive and interact with the world. It was formulated by mother-daughter duo Catherine Cook Myers and Isabel Briggs Myers, and is based off some of Carl Jung's theories. There were 3 personality dimensions that Jung spoke about, the first being where you direct your energy and where you get it from, so introversion and extroversion. Introversion being more about valuing time alone and being energized through solitude, and extroversion being more about enjoying being around other people and feeling energized through connection with others. The second, which is a mental or cognitive function, which is about how you gather information about your surroundings, either through sensing or intuition. Sensing focuses on preference for sensory data, things that we can experience with our 5 senses. You rely on your physical senses to assess everything around you, and with intuition, that's more about going with your gut feeling and an ability to make connections between things that are otherwise not apparent. The third is another mental or cognitive function, which relates to how we make decisions about information that we have perceived, either through thinking or feeling. I suppose that one's pretty self-explanatory, but if you sway more towards thinking, you'll probably be quite analytical and can potentially detach yourself emotionally from a situation in order to approach it from a more logical, I suppose, objective place. Whereas if you're more of a feeler, you'll follow your heart. You'll make decisions based more around emotions, and you might be more compassionate and empathetic. It was then that Catherine Briggs and Isabel Briggs Myers added a 4th dimension, which was judgment and perception, which relates to how you move about in the world, whether through judgment, which is more about orderliness and organisation, and perception being more about being carefree and laid back and just going with the flow. So all in all, there are 16 different personality types based off of these 4 categories, and for me, I am an INTJ, so that's introverted, intuitive, thinking and judging. Before I took the test, I knew that I was definitely introverted. To be honest, I didn't really need the test to tell me that. I've always been incredibly introverted. I typically struggle to be around people for more than a few hours, even people that I like. The fact that I have a separate bedroom to my partner just shows how much I struggle to be around people. And bizarrely, I feel 10 times lonelier with people around me than I do on my own. I never really understood people who would call themselves introverts but seemingly would go out every weekend to places full of people, and who would then come home and be perfectly fine and not feel exhausted or like they want to die. But obviously it's on a scale, and some people might find they're more 50-50, which I believe there is a word for someone who kind of fits in between an introvert and an extrovert, but I can't remember what it is. Some people might find they're more on the introverted side but can still handle social situations. I guess for me, I'm quite extreme. The fact that I scored only 4% extroverted would suggest that. The INTJ is often called the mastermind, or according to the 16 personalities site, the architect. INTJs tend to be very strategic, intelligent, open-minded and determined. They also have a tendency to be a little bit arrogant and insensitive at times, or at least they can be perceived that way by other people. They aren't particularly emotional, or at least they're not particularly emotional outwardly. They usually prefer to remain rational at all times and to shield their emotions. Because the emotional side is quite underdeveloped, they can actually experience emotions more intensely than emotional personality types, because they've had no way of learning to really deal with emotions. And for me, I can 100% relate to that. It's a pretty rare personality type, with only 2% of the population being an INTJ, and women being even rarer at 0.8%. There's a quote from the 16 personalities page on INTJs that I definitely relate to quite strongly. A paradox to most observers, architects are able to live by glaring contradictions that nonetheless make perfect sense, at least from a purely rational perspective. For example, architects are simultaneously the most starry-eyed idealists and the bitterest of cynics, a seemingly impossible conflict. Now, I've taken the test several times over the years just to see how much the results vary. Obviously there won't be a massive difference, but how I'm feeling about myself and how I perceive myself can shift. So the answers I give might change slightly. However, every single time I have come out as an INTJ, apart from once when I came out as an INTP. I'm almost 50-50, but I typically come out under judging rather than perceptive. Giz made quite a valid point in his video about how it might not be the most accurate test, as your perception of yourself might differ greatly from someone else's perception of you. So if someone else was to take the test for you and to answer the questions as they see you, things would probably be quite different. I know in the past I've had a few people not believe that I am an INTJ because they've seen a side of me that to them doesn't really fit with the definition, or I guess their definition of what an INTJ is. Here are two separate tests. You can see that there are some changes but not on a massive scale. Now here there is also a fifth section which I haven't mentioned yet, and this is between assertive and turbulent. Assertive being how stable you are, and turbulent being, well, not so stable. As you can see, I'm not so stable. So as well as talking about the MBTI personalities, I wanted to talk about the Enneagram. When I was initially learning about the MBTI personalities, I'd seen several links to the Enneagram types, and eventually I looked into that. Now I'm not really sure of the validity of the Enneagram, what it's based on and if it holds any weight, but it's something that I've often seen correlating with the 16 personalities of the MBTI. So the Enneagram is split into 9 different personality types, and it's a bit complicated to figure out. This is what the diagram looks like. I'm still not 100% sure how this works, but you only really need to know how this works if you want to look deeper into it. So you are one of 9 different personality types, and you also have a wing. So for me, I am a 5, which means my wing is either a 4 or a 6. And that's basically like secondary characteristics. So I'm a 5 that will either lean more towards a 4 or more towards a 6. Like I said, it's a bit complicated, but for me, I just wanted to find out what my core personality type was. And as a 5, it's actually quite similar to what an INTJ is. Type 5s are isolated, withdrawn, perceptive and innovative. Their core fear is being incapable, not smart enough and useless, with their core desire to be knowledgeable, competent and capable. What I quite like about this is that it has different levels, 1 being the best and 9 being the worst, and it explains the personality type at each stage. So for a type 5 at level 1, become visionaries, broadly comprehending the world while penetrating it profoundly, open-minded, take things in whole in their true context, make pioneering discoveries and find entirely new ways of doing and perceiving things. And at level 9, at the worst, seeking oblivion, they may commit suicide or have a psychotic break with reality. Deranged, explosively self-destructive with schizophrenic overtones. Generally corresponds to the schizoid avoidant, and schizotypal personality disorders. So, sounds a bit scary there, but it's something I definitely relate to. When I'm doing okay, I'm definitely very determined, I'm very focused. I would say I was reasonably intelligent. I have a lot of ideas, and maybe this is quite grandiose or delusional of me, but I think they're pretty good and could lead on to great things, not just for me, but for other people. When I'm not doing so well, I really lose myself. I start to get confused a lot between objective physical reality and my own inner reality, and that all gets pretty blurry and interwoven. Also with the psychosis and voice hearing and all that other fun stuff. I don't think that's to say if you are a type 5, you're psychotic or schizophrenic, or that you will become that, but for me that description fits pretty accurately. But that being said, I'm still not really sure how accurate these things are. Even with the MBTI, it's hard for me to say if that's truly how I am, or if that's a product of mental illness. For example, being very introverted and withdrawn could relate more to my mental health than to my true personality. I mean, probably not on that one, because even before I went insane in the membrane, I was still pretty withdrawn. And also quite interesting is how all my voices have different personality types. I realise that if someone has stumbled upon this video and hasn't seen any of my other videos, this all might be quite confusing for you. But anyway, I guess that's all I kind of wanted to talk about for today. So what we have learned is that I am an unstable genius who will likely kill themselves. But anyway, I will leave links in the description to places where you can learn more about the MBTI personality types, as well as the Enneagram types, if you want to find out what your type is. The same as what Giz said, it would be good to hear from you what your type is. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I've been Max, aka the Rare Rabbit. See you in the next video. So as well as talking about the MBTI personalities, I wanted to... oh, for fuck's sake.